The silver tray trembled in Eleanor Hartwell's hands as she climbed the servants' staircase to the third floor of Thornwood Manor. 23 years she had served this household. First as a scullery maid at 14, then rising through the ranks to housekeeper. 23 years of polishing the same banisters, arranging the same roses in crystal vases, ensuring every surface gleamed for the endless parade of nobility that graced Lord Ashford's halls. And in all that time, she had perfected the art of invisibility. The bruise on her wrist throbbed beneath her sleeve, a parting gift from Lady Pemberton's walking stick when Eleanor had failed to curtsy quickly enough yesterday evening. The elderly dowager had a reputation for her sharp tongue and sharper accessories. Eleanor had learned long ago not to flinch, not to cry out. Servants who showed weakness found themselves dismissed without references. She paused at the landing, steadying her breathing. Through the tall windows, the autumn sun cast golden light across the Persian carpets. Beyond the glass, the Yorkshire moors stretched endlessly, their wild beauty a stark contrast to the rigid propriety within these walls. Sometimes Eleanor imagined walking into that wilderness and never returning, but she had her younger sister to think of. Margaret worked in the kitchens, and their combined wages barely kept their widowed mother fed and housed in the village. Duty, Eleanor reminded herself. Always duty. The sound of raised voices drifted from the drawing room. Lady Ashford entertaining her circle of friends. Eleanor recognized the cruel laughter of Viscountess Blackwood, whose favourite sport was reducing maids to tears with impossible demands. Just last week, she had ordered young Annie to polish every window in the manor before dawn, then complained the girl had disturbed her sleep with the noise. Eleanor knocked softly on the door to Lord Ashford's private study, balancing the afternoon tea service with practiced ease. "Enter," came the voice, deep, cultured, with an edge that made servants hurry their steps. She pushed open the door with her shoulder and stepped inside. The study was all dark wood and leather, lined with books that reached the ceiling. Lord Ashford stood at the window, his back to her, hands clasped behind him. Even in silhouette, he commanded attention, tall, broad-shouldered, with an aristocratic bearing that spoke of centuries of breeding. Though he had only inherited the estate 5 years ago, at 30, the household whispered about him. He kept strange hours. He rarely dined with his wife. He disappeared for weeks at a time on mysterious business in London. And there was something about his eyes, pale grey, almost silver, that seemed to see through pretense and propriety straight into the soul. "Your tea, my lord," Eleanor murmured, setting the tray on his desk with barely a sound. "Mrs. Hartwell." He turned, and those strange eyes fixed on her. "A moment, if you please." Eleanor froze, her heart hammering. In 23 years, Lord Ashford had never addressed her directly. She was furniture, part of the house itself, noticed only when something went wrong. "My lord?" Her voice came out steadier than she felt. He moved closer, his gaze travelling over her face with an intensity that made her want to step back. But servants did not retreat from their employers. She stood perfectly still, eyes lowered in deference. "How long have you served this household?" he asked. 23 years, my lord. Since I was 14. 23 years. Something flickered across his features. Was it surprise? Concern? "And in all that time, has anyone ever asked you how you fare?" The question was so unexpected that Eleanor's carefully maintained composure cracked. She looked up, meeting his eyes for just a moment before remembering herself and dropping her gaze again. "I fare well enough, my lord. Thank you for your consideration." "Do you?" His voice had softened, taken on a quality she had never heard from any nobleman. "Your sleeve, Mrs. Hartwell. It has slipped." Horror washed through her. She glanced down and saw that her left cuff had indeed shifted, revealing the purple-black bruise that circled her wrist like a bracelet. Quickly, she tugged the fabric back into place. "An accident, my lord. Clumsy of me." "Was it Lady Pemberton's walking stick, or the Viscountess' riding crop?" Eleanor's lungs locked. She stared at him, unable to form words. How could he possibly know? Lord Ashford's mouth compressed at one corner. Not with anger at her, she realized with shock, but with barely contained fury directed elsewhere. "I have been a poor master," he said quietly. "Absent. Neglectful. I have allowed cruelty to flourish under my own roof while I attended to matters I deemed more important. My lord, I assure you, do not make excuses for them." His voice cut through her protest like a blade. "And do not lie to protect those who have harmed you. I can see it, Mrs. Hartwell. Now that I am finally looking, I can see it all." He moved to his desk and pulled out a chair, one of the fine leather chairs reserved for guests of rank. "Please, sit." "My lord, I cannot—" "I am asking you to sit, Mrs. Hartwell. Not as your employer, but as someone who wishes to right a terrible wrong." Eleanor's legs trembled as she lowered herself into the chair. The leather was soft, luxurious. She had polished this very chair 100 times, but never imagined sitting in it. Lord Ashford took the seat across from her, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. In the afternoon light, his face was striking. Sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw, and those extraordinary eyes that seemed to hold depths of sorrow she could not fathom. "Tell me," he said gently. "Tell me everything." And something in his voice, in the genuine concern etched across his features, broke through the walls Eleanor had built over 2 decades of service. The words began to flow, haltingly at first, then faster. She told him about Lady Pemberton's casual violence, about the Viscountess's cruel games, about Lady Ashford's cold indifference to the suffering of those beneath her notice. She told him about the cook who pinched the maids until they bruised, about the stable master who withheld wages for imagined infractions, about the endless small cruelties that made up the daily existence of those who served. She told him about her sister Margaret, about their mother, about the fear that kept them all silent and compliant. And as she spoke, tears began to slip down her cheeks. Tears she had held back for so many years that releasing them felt like breaking a dam. When she finally fell silent, Lord Ashford reached across and took her hand, the bruised one, with infinite gentleness. His touch was cool, almost cold, but there was such tenderness in it that Eleanor felt something shift in her chest. "No more," he said, and his voice carried the weight of an oath. "I swear to you, Eleanor Hartwell, no more. This ends today." "My lord, you cannot. They are your wife's guests, your family's friends. They are parasites who have mistaken my tolerance for weakness." His eyes flashed with something that might have been dangerous in another man, but in him seemed almost protective. "I have lived a long time, Mrs. Hartwell. Longer than you might imagine. And I have learned that true nobility has nothing to do with titles or bloodlines. It is found in the hearts of those who endure suffering with grace, who protect those weaker than themselves, who maintain their humanity in the face of cruelty." Eleanor stared at him, her heart pounding. There was something in his words, in the way he spoke of living a long time, that sent a shiver down her spine. But it was not fear. It was something else entirely. "I do not understand, my lord." "You will." He released her hand and stood, moving to the bell pull. "But first, there are changes to be made." Within the hour, the drawing room had been cleared of guests. Eleanor heard the raised voices, the protests, the threats. She heard Lady Pemberton's shrill accusations and the Viscountess's outraged demands. And she heard Lord Ashford's voice, calm, cold, and utterly immovable, informing them that they were no longer welcome in his home. The household buzzed with shock. Servants whispered in corners, hardly daring to believe what had transpired. Lady Ashford herself had retreated to her chambers, claiming a headache, though everyone knew she was furious at her husband's unprecedented interference. That evening, Lord Ashford summoned Eleanor to his study once more. This time, she entered with less trepidation and more curiosity. He stood by the fire, its light casting flickering shadows across his face. "Sit, please," he said, gesturing to the same chair as before. "We have much to discuss." Eleanor sat, folding her hands in her lap. "My lord, I fear I have caused you trouble. You have caused me to wake up," he interrupted gently. "For that I am grateful." He took the chair across from her again, studying her face with that intense, searching gaze. "Tell me, Mrs. Hartwell, do you believe in things that cannot be explained by reason? In creatures that exist in the shadows of the world?" A chill ran through her, but she held his gaze. "I believe there is more to this world than we can see, my lord." A wise answer. He leaned back, his fingers steepled beneath his chin. "I'm going to tell you something that I have told very few people. Something that could put you in danger simply by knowing it. But I find I cannot continue this deception with you. Not after what I have seen today." Eleanor's breath quickened. "My lord? I am not like other men, Eleanor. I have not aged since my 30th year, and I will not age for centuries bitter. I do not eat food, though I pretend to at social occasions. I do not sleep, though I lie in darkness during the day. And I have strengths and senses far beyond those of mortal men." The words settled like dust between them. Eleanor's mind raced, connecting fragments of gossip and observation. His pale skin, his strange hours, the way he seemed to appear and disappear without sound, the coldness of his touch. "You are telling me," she said slowly, "that you are a vampire." He nodded, watching her carefully for signs of fear or revulsion. "I am. I was turned during the Napoleonic Wars by a creature far older than myself. For decades, I struggled with what I had become. I isolated myself from humanity, convinced I was a monster. But I learned in time that what we are matters less than what we choose to do." Eleanor absorbed this revelation with surprising calm. Perhaps it was because she had lived so long with invisible wounds that the idea of invisible truths did not frighten her. Or perhaps it was because, looking at him now, she saw not a monster but a man, or something more than a man, who had shown her more kindness in one afternoon than she had received in 23 years. "Why tell me this?" she asked. "Because I saw your scars today, Eleanor. The visible ones on your wrist, and the invisible ones you carry in your heart. And I realized that I have been hiding behind my own scars, my own fears, for far too long." He leaned forward, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "I have lived among humans for decades, pretending to be one of them, while allowing them to inflict suffering on those under my protection. I told myself I was being civilized, maintaining propriety. But I was simply being a coward." "You are not a coward, my lord." "Am I not? I have the strength to stop cruelty with a word, with a gesture. Yet I turned a blind eye because it was easier, because I feared drawing attention to myself." His eyes, his Tsar, met hers, and in their silver depths she saw centuries of loneliness and regret. "But no more. I will not hide any more. Not from what I am, and not from what is right." Eleanor felt tears prick her eyes again. "What will you do?" "I will clean my house," he said firmly. "The cook will be dismissed. The stable master will be replaced. Lady Pemberton and the Viscountess will never set foot here again. And my wife—" He paused, pain flickering across his features. "My wife and I will have a reckoning. Our marriage has been one of convenience, not love. She married me for my title and wealth. I married her because I thought it would make me seem more human. We have both been living a lie. My lord, such changes, the scandal, let them talk." His voice was fierce now, passionate. "Let all of London society gossip and whisper. I would rather be condemned by hypocrites than continue to enable their cruelty." Eleanor found herself smiling despite the gravity of the situation. "You are remarkable, my lord." "I am selfish," he corrected gently. "Because there is another reason I am making these changes, Eleanor. A reason that has nothing to do with nobility or justice, and everything to do with you." Her heart stopped. "My lord?" He rose and crossed to the window, his back to her once more. "In all my years of existence, I have never met anyone like you. You have endured suffering that would have broken most people. Yet you remain kind. You have been treated as invisible, yet you see everyone around you with compassion. You have every reason to be bitter, yet you are gentle. I am simply a servant, my lord. You are extraordinary." He turned, and the intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. "And I find myself drawn to you in a way I have not been drawn to anyone in decades. It is inappropriate. It crosses every boundary of class and propriety, but I cannot deny it any longer." Eleanor stood on trembling legs. "My lord, you cannot mean—" "I mean exactly what you think I mean." He moved toward her slowly, giving her every opportunity to retreat. "I'm asking if you might consider, if you might possibly feel even a fraction of what I feel. I know it is impossible. I know I have no right. But I must ask Eleanor. I must know." She should have been shocked. She should have fled. But instead, she found herself searching her own heart and discovering something that had been growing there for longer than she realized. She had noticed him over the years. How could she not? But she had buried those feelings so deeply. convinced they were foolish fantasies, that she had almost forgotten they existed. "I feel it too," she whispered. "God help me. I feel it too." The relief that washed over his face was so profound that Eleanor realized how vulnerable he had made himself in that moment. This powerful, immortal being had opened his heart to her, risked rejection, and now stood before her with hope written plainly across his features. "Then we will find a way," he said. "I do not know how yet. The obstacles are immense. But I have lived long enough to know that love, true love, is rarer than immortality itself, and I will not let it slip away." Over the following weeks, Thornwood Manor transformed. The cruel cook was replaced with a kindly woman from the village who treated the kitchen staff with respect. The stablemaster departed, and a fair-minded man took his place. Lady Ashford, faced with her husband's newfound resolve, retreated more and more to London, where she could maintain her social circle without his interference. And Eleanor found herself spending more and more time in Lord Ashford's company. He insisted she take her meals with him in the small dining room, scandalizing the remaining staff. He asked her opinions on household matters, on books, on life itself. And slowly, carefully, they built something neither had expected to find. He told her stories of his long life, of the wars he had witnessed, the changes he had seen, the loneliness that had haunted him. She told him of her dreams, of the sister she loved, of the mother she supported. They discovered shared passions for poetry and music. They laughed together over small absurdities. They sat in comfortable silence, simply enjoying each other's presence. But Eleanor was not naive. She knew that their growing affection existed in a bubble that could not last. Society would never accept a relationship between a nobleman and his housekeeper. And there was still the matter of his nature. He was immortal, and she was not. One evening, as they sat by the fire in his study, she voiced her concerns. "My lord, Sebastian," he corrected gently. "When we are alone, please call me Sebastian." Sebastian. The name felt strange on her tongue, intimate and forbidden. "What future can we possibly have? You are bound by your position, and I by mine. And even if we could overcome that, you will live forever while I grow old and die." He set down his book and turned to face her fully. "I have thought of little else these past weeks, and I have come to a conclusion, though I hesitate to speak it for fear of frightening you. Tell me, there is a way for you to become like me. It is not without risk, and it is not a decision to be made lightly. But if you were willing, if you truly wanted it, I could transform you. We could have eternity together." Eleanor's hands trembled in her lap. "You are offering me immortality." "I am offering you a choice," he said carefully, "a choice I never had. You could remain as you are, and I would cherish every moment we have together, however brief. Or you could join me in this strange existence, and we would face the centuries side by side. What would it mean? What would I become? You would be as I am, stronger, faster, with senses beyond human comprehension. You would need to drink blood to survive, though I have learned to take only from animals or willing donors, never to kill. You would be sensitive to sunlight, though it would not destroy you, merely weaken you. And you would live as long as you chose to live. For our kind can end their existence if they wish, though few do. And my soul," Eleanor whispered, Would I lose my soul? Sebastian reached across and took her hand. I have asked myself that question 1,000 times. I do not know the answer, but I know that I still feel love, compassion, joy, and sorrow. I still choose right over wrong. If I have lost my soul, then perhaps the soul matters less than I believed. Eleanor closed her eyes, overwhelmed by the enormity of the decision before her. To leave behind her humanity, her mortality, everything she had known. To step into darkness and uncertainty. To become something other than what she was. But then she thought of the life she would be leaving behind. A life of servitude, of invisible wounds, of watching her body age while her spirit remained trapped in endless duty. She thought of her sister, who could be provided for with Sebastian's wealth. She thought of her mother, who could live in comfort for her remaining years. And she thought of Sebastian himself, this extraordinary being who had seen her when no one else had, who had shown her kindness when she expected only cruelty, who had offered her not just love, but a choice. I want it, she said, opening her eyes to meet his. I want eternity with you. The joy that lit his face was like sunrise breaking through storm clouds. Are you certain? Once it is done, cannot be undone. I am certain. And she was. For the first time in her life, Eleanor Hartwell was choosing her own path, claiming her own future. When? Tonight, if you wish. But first, there is something I must do. He stood and crossed to his desk, pulling out paper and pen. I'm going to settle a substantial sum on your sister and mother. Enough that they will never want for anything. And I am going to write to my solicitor, instructing him to begin divorce proceedings against Lady Ashford. It will be scandalous, but I no longer care. Sebastian, I will not transform you while I am still bound to another, even in name only. You deserve better than to be hidden away like a secret. When you rise as one of my kind, you will do so as my equal, my partner, my intended bride. Tears streamed down Eleanor's face. Tears of joy this time, not sorrow. I never imagined. I never dared to hope. Hope, my darling Eleanor? Hope for everything. He finished writing and sealed the letters with his signet ring. These will go out tomorrow. And then we wait for the legalities to conclude. It may take months, but we have time. And I want to do this properly. The months that followed were both agonizing and wonderful. Lady Ashford, upon receiving notice of the divorce proceedings, made a great show of outrage before quietly accepting a generous settlement and retreating to her family's estate. London society buzzed with gossip about Lord Ashford's sudden dissolution of his marriage, but he faced the scandal with calm dignity. Eleanor's sister and mother were established in a comfortable cottage with a lifetime income that ensured their security. Margaret wept with joy and confusion, unable to understand her sister's sudden good fortune, but grateful nonetheless. And through it all, Sebastian and Eleanor grew ever closer. He taught her about his world, the hidden society of vampires that existed alongside human civilization, the rules they followed to remain concealed, the dangers they faced from those who would hunt them. She learned that he was not alone, that there were others like him scattered across Europe, some good and some wicked, all trying to find their place in a world that feared what it did not understand. Finally, on a crisp autumn evening, exactly 1 year after he had first truly seen her scars, Sebastian came to Eleanor with a small velvet box. They stood in the garden of Thornwood Manor, surrounded by roses that bloomed impossibly late into the season. The moon hung full and bright overhead, casting silver light across the grounds. "Eleanor Hartwell," he said, dropping to one knee despite his noble birth, "will you do me the honor of becoming my wife? Will you stand beside me through the centuries, facing whatever may come with courage and grace?" "Yes," she breathed. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger, a band of silver set with a stone that seemed to hold moonlight itself. Then he rose and drew her into his arms, kissing her with a tenderness that made her forget everything but this moment, this man, this impossible love. "Are you ready?" he whispered against her lips. "Ready to leave your old life behind and step into the new?" "I am ready." He led her back to his study where he had prepared everything. Candles burned softly, casting warm light across the room. He had explained the process to her many times. How he would drink from her until she was on the edge of death, then give her his own blood to complete the transformation. It would hurt, he had warned her. It would feel like dying, because in a sense it was. But Eleanor was not afraid. She had lived with pain for so long that she knew she could endure this final trial. She lay back on the chaise, her heart pounding, but her resolve steady. Sebastian knelt beside her, his hand cradling her face with infinite gentleness. "I love you," he said. "I will love you until the stars burn out and the world ends." "I love you too," she whispered, "now and forever." He bent his head to her throat, and she felt the sharp sting of his teeth piercing her skin. The pain was intense but brief, quickly replaced by a strange floating sensation. She felt her life draining away, felt herself slipping toward darkness, and she was not afraid. Just when she thought she might fade entirely, Sebastian pulled back and bit his own wrist. He pressed it to her lips, and she tasted blood, rich, strange, powerful. Instinct took over, and she drank deeply, feeling strength flood back into her limbs, feeling something fundamental shift within her. The transformation took hours. She burned and froze, died and was reborn, screamed and wept, and finally fell silent as her body remade itself into something new. Through it all, Sebastian held her, whispered words of love and encouragement, anchored her to the world when she might have drifted away entirely. When she finally opened her eyes, the world had changed. Colors were more vivid, sounds more distinct. She could hear Sebastian's heart, or rather, the slow, faint echo of what had once been a heartbeat. She could smell the roses in the garden, the leather of the books, the ancient wood of the manor itself, and she felt strong, stronger than she had ever imagined possible. "Welcome back, my love," Sebastian said, his face radiant with relief and joy. "How do you feel?" Eleanor sat up slowly, marveling at the ease of movement, the absence of the aches and pains that had plagued her mortal body. "I feel alive, more alive than I have ever felt." He laughed, a sound of pure happiness. "That is the greatest irony of our existence. We are the undead, yet we experience life more intensely than most mortals ever do." She looked down at her hands, still her hands, but somehow different. Paler, yes, but also more graceful, more powerful. She was still Eleanor Hartwell, but she was also something more now. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we marry." Sebastian said firmly, in a small ceremony, with only those who know our secret and accept it. And then we begin our life together, our very long life together. The wedding took place a month later in the private chapel of Thornwood Manor. Only a handful of guests attended. Sebastian's solicitor, who had become a trusted friend, an elderly vampire named Nathaniel, who had served as Sebastian's mentor, and Eleanor, the sister Margaret, who had been told the truth and, after her initial shock, had embraced her sister's choice with love and support. Eleanor wore a gown of ivory silk that seemed to glow in the candlelight. Her dark hair was crowned with roses from the garden, and as she walked down the aisle towards Sebastian, she felt not like a servant pretending to be a lady, but like a woman claiming her rightful place beside the man she loved. They spoke their vows in voices that rang clear and true. They promised to love and honor each other through the centuries, to face whatever challenges came with courage and grace, to build a life based not on the cruelty of the old world, but on the hope of something better. When the vicar pronounced them husband and wife, Sebastian kissed her with a passion that made the candles flicker and the roses bloom brighter. And Eleanor kissed him back, pouring into that kiss all the love and gratitude and fierce joy that filled her immortal heart. The years that followed proved that their love was not just a fleeting passion, but a deep and abiding partnership. They traveled across Europe together, meeting others of their kind, learning the full scope of the vampire world. They returned to Thornwood Manor each autumn, maintaining the estate as a sanctuary for those who needed refuge, both mortal and immortal. Eleanor discovered that she had a gift for healing, both physical and emotional. She began to take in servants who had been mistreated elsewhere, offering them safety and dignity. Under her guidance, Thornwood became known as a place where all were valued, where cruelty had no home. Sebastian, freed from the pretense of his false marriage, threw himself into using his wealth and influence for good. He funded schools for poor children, hospitals for the sick, shelters for those without homes. Together, they became a force for positive change in their corner of England, and through it all their love only deepened. They learned each other's hearts with the patience that immortality afforded. They discovered new joys in each passing decade, new reasons to cherish their existence. On the 50th anniversary of the night Sebastian had first truly seen Eleanor's scars, they stood once more in the garden of Thornwood Manor. The roses bloomed as abundantly as ever, their scent sweet on the autumn air. "Do you ever regret it?" Sebastian asked, his arm around her waist. "Giving up your mortality, your humanity?" Eleanor leaned into him, feeling the solid strength of his presence. "Never. I gave up a life of invisible suffering for a life of visible joy. I traded servitude for partnership, silence for voice, invisibility for presence." She turned to face him, her silver eyes, so like his now, shining with love. "You saw me when I was invisible, Sebastian. You saw the scars your court had given me, and you chose to heal them rather than ignore them. How could I ever regret that?" He cupped her face in his hands, his touch as gentle as it had been that first day in his study. "You healed me too, my darling. You showed me that what I am matters less than what I choose to do. You gave me purpose, hope, and a reason to embrace eternity rather than simply endure it." "Then we have both been blessed," Eleanor said softly. "More than blessed," Sebastian agreed. "We have been transformed, not by blood or magic, but by love itself. He kissed her then, there, in the moonlit garden, surrounded by roses and starlight. And Eleanor kissed him back, knowing that they had centuries more of such kisses ahead of them, centuries of love and laughter and shared purpose. She had been a servant for 23 years, invisible and wounded. But she had been a beloved wife and partner for 50, seen and cherished. And she would be so for centuries more, building a life that honored not just their love, but the love they could share with others. The scars of her mortal life had faded, replaced by the strength of her immortal one. And as she stood in her husband's arms beneath the ancient stars, Eleanor Hartwell, now Eleanor Ashford, knew that she had found something rarer than immortality itself. She had found home. She had found purpose. She had found a love that would endure not just until death, but far, far beyond it. And that, she thought, as Sebastian spun her in a dance across